An untold number of victims are still trapped inside the wreckage of the building. Mayor Giuliani and the police chief confirming they believe there are people who are still alive. Unfortunately, rescue workers cannot get to them at this hour because of falling debris, because of smoke, and because of structures of buildings that might continue to collapse. Mayor Giuliani said the death toll could be horrendous. He said the numbers are going to be very, very high. What we can tell you tonight is the city is confirming that some 265 firefighters are believed to be dead. The police chief saying among the dead, the chief of the fire department as well as the deputy chief, some 85 police officers missing tonight. CNN's Peter Viles takes us back to the start of this dreadful day. I need to warn you, the pictures are graphic. Some of you might find them disturbing.
Just before 9 a.m. Eastern, Americans awakened to shocking pictures from New York.
I just saw the entire top part of the World Trade Center explode.
Minutes earlier at 8:45, a hijacked plane had slammed into one of the World Trade Center towers. 9:03 a.m., a sickening sight. Oh my God! A second plane crashes into the Trade Center.
See the damage to that about the middle of the building. Just incredible what we are witnessing here.
People on the ground look on in horror as workers in the Trade Center towers fall, or maybe even jump to their deaths. 9:30 a.m., the president in Florida.
Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
The airport's being evacuated. They need to go home.
9:40, all American airports have been closed, but there are still planes in the sky. And minutes later, one of them crashes into the Pentagon.
Several Army officers I talked to reported hearing a big explosion, seeing shards of metal.
9:59, as the Pentagon burns, the South Tower of the World Trade Center buckles and collapses. 10:29, the second Trade Center tower collapses. An American landmark is in ruins.
Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car.
Thousands feared dead, lower Manhattan shrouded in smoke and debris. 10:48, police in western Pennsylvania confirmed that a fourth hijacked plane crashed a half hour earlier outside Pittsburgh.
Enormous loss of life there.
Noon, shock and disbelief. As the dead and wounded are taken to East Coast hospitals, officials in New York and Washington report a shortage of blood and appeal to Americans to donate their blood. Late afternoon, New Yorkers are evacuating lower Manhattan by the thousands. Parts of the city unrecognizable. A third building at the Trade Center, this one 47 stories, collapses. At Bellevue Hospital, an official says, quote, "It is a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions." Peter Viles, CNN, New York.
And if you were with us through Mayor Giuliani's news conference, you can see how tough it is for anybody to sort out the magnitude of what this city endured as well as what Washington endured today. I was on the phone earlier with a city official who believes the death toll will go into the thousands. Once again, that is impossible to even get a sense of the number of injuries and the number of deaths because of the fact that rescuers simply cannot get in to that perimeter area surrounding the World Trade Center because of fears of further structural collapse. I wanted to let you know what we can also tell you New Yorkers can expect in the morning. The city from 14th Street down will be closed off to civilians at least until Thursday. All New York City public schools, parochial schools, and private schools will be closed tomorrow. All, as I mentioned, all businesses below 14th Street will be closed as well. The nation's airports have been completely shut down at least until noon Eastern on Wednesday. The stock markets, as you can see on the screen, will also be closed. And you know that the news from the Asian markets that are now opening is not good, opening to a 17-year low. But once again, New Yorkers are going to wake up to a skyscape they barely recognized. The two towering World Trade Towers no longer exist. And Wolf, throughout the next hour, we will hope to be bringing you more information from some of the trauma centers in the area that are trying to treat patients. We know for a fact some 300 victims are being treated at St. Vincent's Hospital, and we're going to go to our reporter live there to get a better sense of what their condition is at the moment.
Paula, President Bush was very succinct in his remarks tonight, insisting, quote, "Today our nation saw evil," confirming the worst fears when he said this: thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. He began this day on a routine assignment in Florida, promoting his education agenda when he got the word of the plane crash, the plane attack on the World Trade Center towers in Manhattan. He was immediately flown shortly thereafter to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana for security considerations. His security personnel not believing it was safe yet to return to Washington. From Barksdale, he was flown to Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, home of the Strategic Command, where he remained for several hours, participated in a telephone conference call with his national security advisors. Eventually, it was determined that it was safe for him to return to Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington. He came in under unprecedented escort protection from F-15s and F-16s, eventually landing at Air Force Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington. We're taking a look at some of those escorts that accompanied Air Force One on the way to back to Washington. And once he landed at Andrews, he was flown by Marine One, the Marine helicopter, to the south lawn of the White House. Once again, almost unprecedented decoy helicopters, Marine helicopters, joining him in order to get to the White House. The President spoke for just under 5 minutes, and he spoke from the heart.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
President Bush speaking at the White House almost 2 hours ago from the Oval Office, his first nationally televised Oval Office address. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, is at the White House. John, from that address, the president met with his top national security advisors. What do we know about that meeting?
That's right, Wolf. The president immediately proceeded to that meeting at the White House Situation Room. It lasted a little under an hour, we are told. On the national security side, the president was brought up to speed on U.S. military deployments around the world, including the status of U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf region, as well as the deployment today of naval vessels from Norfolk, Virginia, up along the eastern seaboard of the United States. Also, that meeting was expanded beyond the normal national security meeting in a way to take into account the devastating effect of this tragedy. The Transportation Secretary, the Health and Human Services Secretary, and the Director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency brought into that meeting as well to discuss with the President and his national security team the steps the federal government is taking to try to deal with the devastation of this. Now, we are told from sources earlier today that senior administration officials told key members of Congress that they are, quote, certain, based on the evidence they have gathered so far, confident based on the evidence gathered so far, that people and organizations associated with Osama bin Laden are responsible for this. But coming out of the national security meeting tonight, I was told by a senior administration official they do not want to jump to conclusions here. The administration will say nothing publicly about that. This official saying, quote, we're going to take a little time to sort this out. So the president being briefed by his team, he is here at the White House tonight. That meeting is now over, but look for the president tomorrow to have more public events. The goal here is to send reassuring signals to the American people. We are told the first order of business tomorrow is a bipartisan meeting with the congressional leadership here at the White House. Wolf.
And John, the president was also sending a very powerful signal to the enemies of the United States when he said this. Let me read this line from his speech. He said, "We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them," which suggests that some states may eventually be paying a price if the U.S. concludes that they were responsible as well.
It certainly does. The president's very strong words there come at a time this administration and especially the prior administration had been criticized for some by not taking stronger actions against the governments that have provided safe harbor and financial support to Osama bin Laden. Again, the administration publicly not assigning any blame, but we do know from the intelligence briefings provided to key members of Congress that is the administration's, at least the preliminary conclusion. Again, 3 sources I spoke to on Capitol Hill say administration officials used the word confident that the evidence they were gathering so far pointed to the bin Laden organization. Wolf.
All right, John King, stand by at the White House. I want to bring in our military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. He's at the Pentagon, which saw devastation there as well. Jamie, first of all, what do we know about the casualty count at the Pentagon?
Well, Wolf, just a short time ago, we got the first estimate of how high the death toll may be here at the Pentagon. It could be as many as 800 people killed, according to Arlington County fire officials, who say they've been told by Pentagon officials that the range of missing persons here is somewhere between 100 and 800. So that's the range that the death toll could take here at the Pentagon. Arlington County fire officials also say that the work tonight